So you're looking at the financial affidavit of income and expenses. And you all know that this is a fundamental form that a lot of courts would even require before you file. And other courts want to see it someday. In my collaborative practice, I've found that signing one of these and providing it to collaborative co-counsel also creates a sense of calm and confidence, because now they have the disclosures signed under oath for their file. They can show it to their client, say, look, this is what they would do in litigation anyway. You've got the gold standard of representation of disclosure. So the software has been updated quite a bit, and some of you may have noticed that and some of you may not have. So I'm going to walk you through it a little bit. Obviously, we don't have the tabs across the top anymore. We've got a menu down the side like a lot of other software. You can close this by clicking on the little hamburger icon and it pops back out. I want to start by showing you File Manager. This is brand new, and I think you will really like it instead of the way the software handled it prior to the update. This is what it sounds like. You can go find any file you might have by simply putting in the name right here. You can filter by other ways, by dates, by the most recent. You can look at the files of other people. I don't want Mary to, don't tell Mary I looked at her files. So now I could work on one of Mary's files if I needed to. Let me go back to me. Shared archives, this is important. This is where you find the files that, I'm sorry, shared files, not archives. This is where you find the files that you have started by having the client do the data entry. It's just that simple. You all probably know that you can send a data entry module to your clients from the software when you start a new case. I'll just show you that quickly here. You'd click Register Client. You'd fill out these short forms with their email address, and you create it, and this would send the client an email saying your lawyer would like you to start filling out some forms. I'll plug it that way there. Now it's got oh, here's the email address up here. So that's how you do it under the new File Manager. And when you're in File Manager looking for those files, you click on Shared Files. Really simple to use. You can look at who's been working on what, if you're into that sort of thing. If you want to see if somebody's worked on a file yet, you could go here and well, there's 600 case files. Maybe I asked a lot of the software. There you go. So you can see when your client logged in. You can see when I worked on something. Might be helpful if you forget how long you worked on something for billing purposes, or you want to see if your paralegal is done with the work he or she was asked to do, so that you could proceed with your work on the file. It's self-explanatory. I encourage you to play around with it and get used to it, because it's really a lot. No, you didn't. It's a lot easier than okay, I know what I have to do now. I have to close out of this. This was also a sample. So I'll load this, and then I'm going to go back and load the one I want. Okay, so we're back in the sample Ohio data, which I'm happy to send to any of you if you want to use it to play around with. So that's File Manager right here. Client data entry. We've tried to make this so much more intuitive and inviting and simple to use. So when you're at this point, this is the beginning of the software. Right now it's at the complete version of the child support data entry. You can do a quick case right here. The number of fields you need to fill out are very few, and you'd get a result up here in about 8 to 9 fields that you've filled out, obviously depending upon how many children there are. For any case with any complexity, you're going to go to the complete data entry for child support, and you work your way through these areas of data. Really, you can do mostly just with the children, wages, because you always need to know that, and deductions. Once you've done those 3 areas, you've got a pretty reliable result up here. You have to get the deductions because you have to have a healthcare obligor. You may have a work-related childcare worksheet, which you get to right here. This is a lot nicer than the old way. In this case, we've got each parent paying the same amount for this child, and this child is aged out. You'll notice that the software calculates the age in months so that it determines the, well, these are annual numbers. It determines whether you're under the cap or not. So in this case, you'll see that I just caused it to go, it exceeds the maximal allowable cost. The actual was 12. You could override this and carry that forward to the guideline worksheet, but I wouldn't really recommend it. If you want to know what the maximum allowable cost is, you can click on the question mark bubbles. You probably all know that. Here is this is from the statute or from the Department of Job and Family Services, DJFS, Child Support Manual. If you don't have the manual, let me know. I can send it to you, or you can find it online. It's a guide to filling out child support that is designed to work just like instructions for filling out a tax return. And I know how much you all love doing that. But it's really easy to follow, and it's a great refresher when you're doing this to double check how to complete the form. So, and this table is in there as well. We've basically inserted many parts of that manual into the software in these question mark bubbles. So that's the work-related childcare worksheet that's found in deductions. Also found in deductions is the worksheet for deviations. It follows the statute exactly. You can put in a positive number or a negative number. You can do it for either parent. I want you to notice that this little dialog bubble is opaque and it's doubled as opposed to a single one. This is your visual clue that there's a footnote there. Kim is disabled. Well, that's a pretty important fact to know, but there's nothing on the child support guideline worksheet or the deviation worksheet that would explain why there's a number on this line. So by filling in a footnote and having it print with your worksheet, you're going to be telling the story to the judge or the CSEA worker or the post-decree motion magistrate why there was a deviation, not just the amount, but why. I just think that this is really an excellent way to practice. It sets you apart. It lets you tell the story. When the client sees it, they feel like you heard them. It's just so valuable to use these footnotes whenever you can to color outside the box or the form, as it were. Up here, you notice that there's a checkbox checked. This is the deviation from overnights above 90 overnights. You notice we say it's not in the statute. We explain right here the math on how we do it. It's very complicated. We add an additional percent per overnight. And instead of going to 183 overnights, we stop at 180 overnights. It's a straight line deviation. It's explained right here. This is not in the statute. It's just the math on how the extension of that 10% adjustment for over 90 overnights per year would extend to any given number of overnights up to 180. So what happens when you click this box, if you have a case with more than 90 overnights, the child support number goes down, and the amount that it goes down by is automatically filled out for you on the deviation worksheet. You can see that it's a blue field. Blue means it's a calculated field, and you shouldn't try to type over it. Yellow fields are the fields that you want to type data into. You could override this, but I don't know why you would. You really should go back to the amount of the deviation, or reevaluate your method for deviation. If I deselect this, you'll see that the child support number went up and those numbers disappeared here. It's a good way to illustrate for somebody, what if we do this and what if we don't? What's the difference in the cost? $290 to $373, less than $100. So you're filling out the child support guidelines worksheet when you're doing these children, wages, deductions, work-related child care, and deviations. You've completed a child support guideline worksheet, essentially. There may be more facts that require more attention, but you have created a child support guideline worksheet. And remember, those are always in the report section. Today, we're just going to talk about entering data and looking at how it looks and getting the form you want. So we're going to jump to the guideline worksheet, and there it is. Notice all the fields are blue except a few. We don't think line 6 serves a purpose. There's some of you that might live in a venue where the CSEA wants you to put the amount of spousal support in line 6. I've had this debate with some CSEA administrators, and we feel strongly that this is not where the alimony or spousal support number should go, because if you read the definition of annual gross income under the statute, it includes spousal support in line 1 gross income. So I had a client call me, actually it's a collaborative, and the wife called me and said, did my husband get a raise? Because the number on line 1 was a big number, and she couldn't figure out how it got that high. Well, she makes a lot of money, and what she wasn't realizing was that we were including the spousal support she was going to pay her spouse in that line 1 guideline. So I simply clicked on this worksheet and sent it to her and my client and said, this is where those numbers come from. And everything was fine when they realized what was going on. So this is one of the 3 worksheets within the guideline worksheet that I strongly urge you to print out, hit PDF, print it out, and attach it to your guideline worksheet. You're leaving breadcrumbs for those who come after you, who want to figure out where these numbers came from and whether there's been a change in circumstances, or why they didn't get more money, or why they had to pay so much. You all have gotten those calls. And if this call is coming in 6 months after you close this file, you're not going to remember. It may be that you need to have it handy to answer your own client's call about where did this number come from, because they forget. So again, I want to show you where that link is. This is one of 3 worksheets within the worksheet. And honestly, anytime there's any data in any of them, I make the same recommendation. Print it out, attach it to your guideline worksheet for all of the same reasons. CISA can now carry forward deviations if they can determine the amount and or percentage of the deviation from the previous paperwork. If you don't attach these worksheets, I don't think CISA could carry forward a deviation. Here's the second one, and you've seen it already. It's the work-related child care expense. So I think I would print this because it tells the story that Reese was paying $900, and this is an annual number, so it's a bad example, but $900 a year for Taylor's work, or Taylor's paying $900 a year for Reese's child care. And here's the worksheet. And if you give that if you attach it to your child support guideline worksheet, everybody's going to know what the child care used to be and whether the cessation of it, because the child matured, is in and of itself a basis to modify child support post-decree. I don't have a window to see if anybody's asked any questions. So no, so far I don't see anything in the chat or Q&A. Feel free to speak up if I can help you with anything. Okay, so that's worksheet within the worksheet number 2. Oops. And the third worksheet is the deviation worksheet. And again, it's right down here. It's right here. And I would print that out and attach it to the guideline worksheet. This looks a little different because we ended up with a split custody worksheet. And I overrode the cash medical support deviation, which is why that looks red. That's a vestige from a previous example, I think. So there are, other than the case number and the order number, by the way, if you don't know, the order number is really your domestic relations court case number. And this case number is intended to be your sets number. So this would be a long number starting with a 7, and this would be your domestic relations case number. So you can fill that out on the worksheet. If there's some other income that doesn't fall within the definition of this statute, you can put it here, but we don't think there should be any because the language is all inclusive. Scrolling down, this might be a bad example, but you can put in a deviation in the worksheet for cash medical here. I don't know what the practice is all over the state, but I can say with great confidence that in Northeast Ohio, where cash medical is almost always deviated to 0, because I have yet to run into the client who will keep track of those nickels and dimes. And this is where you would put in that cash medical deviation, in this case, 2 places, because it's a split custody worksheet. Okay, so if there's no questions so far, let me look. Nope. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna jump back and forth between entering data and looking at the reports. And I want you all to feel like after this hour, you can use the software to prepare the 5 Supreme Court forms. So we've been doing child support data entry, and now we're going to go to the financial affidavit section. Parties and children, it's probably already populated from what you put in up here. You can leave yourself a note, you can get more space, you can delete the note, you can get help. You can watch a video on this page. You can click these things to expand them to find out what you put for the child. Maybe you got the birthday wrong and your client rubbed your nose in that mistake. Whatever, these things open and close, they click open and close. You're all looking, by the way, at the cloud version of the software. This desktop version is still being supported. It does get updates, but only if you manually update the desktop yourself. And since you now have cloud access, even if you thought you were only paying for desktop, I really encourage you to begin the transition to the cloud version, because the day will come, and I can't tell you when the desktop version is just going to stop being supported, and it will quickly become out of date and not be safe to use. So make your migration to the cloud now, or start doing it, because it's important. I don't want you to end up in the wrong place. So then we get to the income and expense, and you can see we're referencing the affidavits, and we're asking you to fill out that form. Basically, you're still doing data entry for the analytical tools, but you're filling out the form for the affidavit as well. Right now, we'll just do Taylor's, and you can do the court, the case number, the judge, that sort of thing here. you begin to see the form and what it looks like. I mean, this would look familiar to you if you've been filling these out. This is where you fill out the form, just like anywhere else. It's basically like a form fillable PDF, except we're capturing the data for other reasons on top of just making a form. Here's, you really just work down the line and start filling out these data fields. I clicked on income for Taylor, put in the annual incomes in there. If you don't know the annual, you can put in their hourly rate and their number of hours they work, and the software will fill it out for you. Local tax rate, this person's working for the state of Ohio. Ding, 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 ding. Probably a DOPO situation. This is where you fill out the average of the overtime commission and bonuses for the child support guidelines. You can put in the past income too, because this affidavit calls for it, even though the child support guidelines does not. This is important for the child support only. Think of this as the past, and it says 3 years ago, 2 years last year. This is not what you anticipate bonuses to be in the future. In other words, the average of whatever you put in here is not going to carry forward in the software to the analysis tab on what the gross income is anticipated to be, including bonuses. I hope everybody gets that. It's past and future. If you think of it that way, it should help. So I'm scrolling down and I'm showing that, there's other income coming in for this family, and it's carried over for some other fields, obviously. You can enter this data in more than one place. There's some consulting firm income here. I just did this as an example to show self-employment. The software does calculate the 5.6% deduction for self-employment income, but you have to put it in a business income for the party to have the software do that. I'm going to go back up here and close this set of data. And now we're back to, now we've done income, monthly housing expenses. The housing expenses are done per piece of real estate or rental real estate. There are certain fields that are here and other fields that are in general expenses. The more you use the software, the more you'll get used to where these fields are and which bucket they get dropped in. If you have a renter, I think it's important to do all those rental expenses. In this example, I don't think there's more than one piece of real estate. How am I getting the left links open? Mine keep minimizing once I click on one. Well, that would be infuriating. Try clicking on this hamburger. I think it will stay open then, and then it's staying open, and I'm clicking on that, and it should stay open that way. If it's not, I think you should ask for support by going here and contact us and fill out the form and say, help, my menu keeps shrinking. You'll notice that took you right to the company's website. And since I'm here, I do want you to know that there's a lot of resources here for you. The quick start guide, software help, there's video tutorials, frequently asked questions, how to get tech support, and other stuff. It's not just a point of sale for the software. You can find out when we have other live trainings as well. So don't forget to check out the company's website at familylawsoftware.com when you're looking for answers or you need to ask a question. I hope that answered your question. Family law support at familylaw.com. So we're in income and expenses, and these open and close, other monthly expenses. If you have sent your client the data entry module and you're really lucky, and your client's computer literate and they have data, this will be filled out for you. And you'll look at it and go, wonderful, this is awesome. But Taylor, honey, I'm afraid you really can't spend $800 a month on just yourself. That's a little much. The court's only going to allow 600. That's the standard in Delaware County or wherever you might be. So that's the art of practicing law, is to go through this and look at what your client put in and save them from themselves. Don't make them look like an idiot by putting, I once had a guy who had, oh my God, I guess I missed it. He put in something like $2,000 a month for clothes. And you can bet that raised an eyebrow. So if your client filled this out, you definitely want to double check it and look at it in terms of reasonableness for the court. And they will skip stuff. You'll say to the client, well, don't you ride the train into downtown? Whatever. They overlook things and they're not good. And this is painful and hard for them to do. So you really have to police their data entry if that's what you've done. And sometimes I will just look at this stuff, and if they've done a crappy job, I will put in numbers that I anticipate would be reasonable. In a minute, I'm going to show you how to produce this form and send it to your client to get their feedback on how to polish it and finalize the form so it's ready to be signed and filed. While we're here, here you could put the reason this number is so high is because Taylor is a vegan and shops only at Whole Foods. Okay, that might explain the $800. Am I making somebody embarrassed? And now you can see I've got a opaque footnote there telling us that there's a footnote. We should take a look at that. If there are no questions on this form, it's straightforward. Fill out the form. The little green boxes, this is, I'm going to show you in a minute, but this is the more information box. And it's just what it sounds like. You can put in more information. On clothes, probably not much you need to know about, but on some things, there's a lot more information. I'll try and find an example for you as we go along. So you can see we've just gotten through 3 of these. A basic one, the income, monthly housing and other expenses, but we've got child-related expenses, insurance premiums, monthly education, schools, colleges, camps, monthly health care, and miscellaneous. And you'll notice that we have a total down here. As you're filling these out, this total is always updating so you can see where you are. If you know the clients only make $50,000 a year, you know that with seeing that you've got a problem or they've got a problem. Miscellaneous. So one of the things I like to do when I have the other parties' income and expense affidavit is I'll click both so that I get a column for both. And let's pretend that we were representing Taylor and we've done all of Taylor's work. And we want to put in a number for comparison's sake for Blake in this case. And we don't want to put in all the details of what Blake says is needed to live. Here you see it says remainder of alleged expenses. So at one point I must have calculated the difference between what I'd put in and what the total on the affidavit was. But a lot of times I'll just put in here per affidavit of husband. And I'll put in what their affidavit says they need to live. And let's be outlandish. This is a person of modest means who wants to live a lot larger than they really do. So what have I done? I might even put an affidavit here, a footnote saying per sworn affidavit of June 26, 2022. Now I've specifically referenced it. Boy, I'm going to make that bold. I want the judge to really catch the eye, catch have this catch her eye. And now we've got a lot of money here that is going to go out to support this family's standard of living. Well, I'm going to jump from here, data entry, to reports just for a second, and show you one of my favorite reports, the budget report. And here we have side by side what this family makes and what they spend. And I think it's the best tool to use at a temporary support hearing. Anytime you're arguing support, I've used it as a crib sheet for an opening statement and a closing argument. I've used it in a written closing argument to show what I think the evidence showed. So you can see we've got Blake's income here. We've got a few other data points, but basically down here, we just say per his affidavit, it's that plus all of this. Blake thinks Blake needs $23,000 a month to live on. Taylor's at $7,900. Already, this is standing out as quite disparate. Got a few other expense items here, student loans. We've got the spousal support getting paid out of Blake's income to Taylor. We've got their taxes. And now we get down here and we say, well, if Taylor got that spousal support and child support and has the expenses that Taylor says she has, she would have a surplus every month of $1,373. But $13,000, that just can't be, right? You know that's a work of fiction. And I will put in the other party's affidavit to illustrate how absurd their position is. And I think this is a great example of showing the magistrate. This is Blake's argument about why Blake shouldn't pay spousal support because, oh, gee, golly, I'm going to be in the hole $13,000 a month. And the court's going to say, this really came from their affidavit? And I'll say, yes, Your Honor. And, you've destroyed the party's credibility with just a simple budget report. Here's an example of footnotes being printed. Again, if you're filing a supplemental brief or affidavit in support of temporary support, what a great way to do that by telling the story in the footnotes and illustrating the income expense side by side. So we filled out a report that is not one of the state's reports, but it is a really good tool for analysis and persuasion. Sometimes you just need to show these to the client and say, look, buddy, this isn't going to happen. You're living in a fantasy world. Okay, we did income and expenses. So what does that mean for our reports? We're going to go to the financial affidavits. We're at income and expenses for Taylor. I want to see how this looks. So I'm going to go over here to PDF. And this is how I use the software to help my clients. And now I've got the form as it would look if I filed it with the court at the moment. But gosh, I can see I haven't filled out phone numbers or email addresses. I don't have the last four. I'd go through here and go, yeah, that looks right. That looks right. I would pull out a highlighter and I would highlight the places in this affidavit where I know there should be something filled out that isn't, or that I think is a wrong number. And I might handwrite on it. And then I would scan it in color to my client. And I would say, here's the first draft of your affidavit. We need to get this filed next week. In order to do that, I need you to help me with the highlighted areas. Give us the data that's missing and call me to talk about the other items that don't seem to be right. So it's a client communication tool. It's a way to get the client used to seeing the forms. It helps you get this thing ready long before the day you need to have it. And it looks like a really professionally prepared product. Certainly better than the ones that are hand done in the hallway of the courthouse. So here we have, basically the form completed and ready to be filed if the client has gone through it and signed off on it. And that's how I do the affidavit for income and expenses. But it's also how I do the affidavit for property. And I've already done well, I'll just do it real quick. We'll go back to data entry. We'll say assets and debts. This is affidavit number 2. And you can see here we are, we're going to fill out basically a balance sheet for the family by opening these up and listing the cars and other personal property and the investments that they might have and any pensions they might have. I assume you all know that the software can determine the present value of a periodic payment in the future. In other words, you can get a present value of a pension plan. You can also get the present value of the unpaid spousal support in the case by using the software. Retirement accounts, business interests. I'm going to close this to make room on the screen. Remember, I said there's some self-employment income in this situation. So here's the business. Doesn't tell you much here. That's because in entering a business, you absolutely have to go to the more information button. Click on that, and now you've got tons and tons of places to put in data. You can put in about business valuation. You can do, and I do this, particularly for small businesses, you can do a quick income statement for the business, income and expenses. And you could do this twice. You could do it based on what the other party says that they bring in and what they spend, and you could do it the way it really works, because usually the first one you see is also a work of fiction or inaccurate in some way and to that party's benefit. So I have many times filled this out based on my paralegal's review of the checking account for the business or the data from the business valuation report. Why is this important? Because the net income flows through to the child support guideline worksheet, and it's the number from which the 5.6% self-employment tax is deducted. So it's a really quick, easy form to prepare an income and expense statement for a business. We're back on the business. We decided not to do that. We've got a business valuation, and it tells us what the net income is. So you can just put it in here, and you can put it in on this screen. Cash flow, $100. You could change this, and it would again carry through to the guideline worksheet. You're filling out the child support guidelines worksheet. You're affecting it, excuse me, while filling out the affidavit of assets and liabilities. Cash value life insurance, bankruptcies, that's that little bit of the Ohio form that's unique to us. So, previous transfers and previous bankruptcies, that sort of thing. Other debt. And now once you've gone through all these carrots, and you've put in the debt, and you can, by the way, if it's separate, if you allege that the student loan debt is premarital, you can go in here and mark it as Taylor's separate debt or Blake's separate debt, if you don't want it to be counted as a marital liability. So now you've done the data entry for the affidavit number 2. And we do the same thing. Take a look at it from the PDF and go through it with a highlighter and highlight the things that are missing or that you have questions about. Get it scanned to your clients so that they can fill in, the name of the company that has the life insurance and what that cash value is, or whatever it might be, so that you can finish your preparation of this form. I guess, it may seem cumbersome to have to go back and forth between data entry and the form itself, but our software is much more than a form generation product. And we take the data that you put in and use it for a lot of reasons, not just to print a form for a Supreme Court form number or a local rule. If you didn't put that data in that way, you'd have no use for all of the analytical tools. I hope that makes sense to everyone. So the same thing, you can additional, here, I'll go back to data entry, parent-child affidavit. We did this today at my firm, used this to fill out the parenting proceeding information affidavit. Filed it with a new case today. So health insurance and temporary order, same thing. So you can here fill this out. You can say, oh, we want child support, spousal support, parenting time. We want the court to figure everything out under 75N. And you can fill out here. You can make the fields, the lines bigger than the court form has it set up to be, so that you can tell more of a story here. You can make it bold. So you're not limited to one line of text and these things. Tell the story. Put in the amount you calculated for child support. You're done. This stuff would already be auto-populated based when you set your software up. So now you just go to reports and you want to look at the financial affidavits and take a look at that motion for temporary orders. Is this right? Is it ready for the client to sign? Last example, you fill it out, you send it to the client. Are you sure you want all these boxes checked? What was your date of separation again? I forget. Please tell me, fill this out. You've got this highlighted. It comes back to you, you make the change and you're ready for the client to sign it. So that's how I would recommend using the software to generate the 5 Supreme Court forms. We've got about 15 minutes left. I want to show you the other forms. There's still 12 of you here, so feel free to speak up if you have any questions. Back to data entry. We've done these forms, pension plans. I mean, this is data entry to determine the present value of a pension plan. I'll just touch on this for a second. You can use this software to change the mortality table you want to use to calculate the present value. You can change the discount rate. You can find out where this discount rate is coming from by clicking here, and you'll learn that we use the 20-year Treasury bonds. You could click here to get the Federal Reserve rates. If that's more appropriate, it might be, given what the Fed's doing and likely to continue to do in raising rates. If the pension has COLA, God bless them, you can put in the COLA rate. You can do all these variables and see the result right here. And the software also will calculate the coverture fraction, the marital portion of the pension. In this case, it's all marital. This can be helpful because you might want to apply that coverture fraction to some other asset that you don't have the documents to trace. An IRA contribution, if the parties put in $2,000 every year and you have the balance at the time of marriage, you could use this to calculate the coverture fraction of the value of the IRA. It's not exactly what it's intended for, but it's still a useful tool. You can look at the data as the client sees it. This is an on-client file, so I can't show it to you. Bad example. Okay, let's go down to reports. I want to go through the other reports we have for you. You saw the child support guidelines, court forms. We have 3 right now. Application for child support services. That's the Title 4D services application. You can do data entry, or you can do just a form fillable PDF of that. And the software has at least filled out the fields in the Title 4D that are common to the software and this form. It hasn't filled out the whole form because, in a financial analysis, you don't need to know whether somebody was in the military and what branch. But for the Title 4D services application, you do. We have been known to sit a client down in front of a computer in our office and ask them to just go through this and complete it themselves. It looks much better when they've typed it and we print it for them. than if it gets handwritten. It just is a much more professional product. So the Title 40 services application is here in the court forms. Form 1, this form is a JFS form, and I think it's a great form, and I wish more counties would use it. But right now, I only know of Franklin County that uses Form 1, and Form 1 is a reference to the Department of Job and Family Services form. This is how you would fill out the form to create the court order for wage attachment. And it would be so much nicer to do this than to have to put it in the body of every judgment entry. A few more places for yellow fields to add data, but it's going to be populated by the software predominantly. And then lastly, this is also, I think this is a great affidavit. It's not used for, I've never come across it in my practice in Northeast Ohio, but I know it's used a lot in Central Ohio, which is why we've put it in the software. If it's a child support case in juvenile court, what a great affidavit to use. Or if that's just the issue on post-decree modification, have your client fill this out, or have your paralegal fill this out for your client and file it with the court. The court now knows what it needs to know from your client to do its job. It's under oath, and you are producing a professional product that your client will be proud of. Great form. I really like that affidavit. So those are court forms. You saw financial affidavits, additional forms. Right now, it's income was. This is the Form 1 over again, I believe. It's just in a different format. I think it even says. I thought it had a DFS reference on the bottom. So again, this is the income order on income source, which many people have to prepare. The agency doesn't prepare it. In some counties, the agency does this themselves. So you can see again, the software has populated the fields that it had in common with this form, and you get to do the rest of it in the yellow fields. All right, those are the principal forms. I'm going to just run through these. So those are the forms. That's how you do the data entry. You go through each one of these things, and it should make a lot of sense because you don't have to hunt and look for fields. You can do it in a linear progression and have confidence that you didn't miss something. It's just a much easier way than to bounce around in some other arrangement of the data fields. We followed the affidavits precisely. So reports, we've gone through those. I want to show you view added taxes. This can be important if you have a unique situation. I was using this form a lot to determine the value of the tax credit from the jobs and from the stimulus packages. And you could toggle back and forth by changing who claims the child to see which parent would get the bigger tax credit, or if they were phased out of the tax credit. So this is, a pro forma tax return. And it's also useful if you need to, let's say you wanted to do an offset between housing dollars and 401k dollars. And you needed to know how to gross up the 401k dollars to equal after-tax dollars for the payment of home equity. You can use this to determine what the tax rates are for these people, and then do your math to figure it out. So you've got the federal tax for each of them. You could do the math yourself. I think there's a place where it says the tax rate. Marginal federal tax bracket 32 and 22. So if Blake were paying 401k dollars for home equity dollars to Taylor, you might take the amount Taylor's due times 1.22 to begin a rough estimate of what Taylor would need in order to have the after-tax equivalent. I hope that makes sense to everybody and you get what I just said. The budget report I showed you already, but it bears repeating. You can tell more of the story up here. You can change the years. It's just such a great illustration of what their bottom line is and what their outcome is. And if this weren't so silly and these numbers were functionally the same or pretty close to the same or equally bad, then you know you've got a worksheet that's probably going to be embraced by the court, because they usually spread the pain equally and they frequently want to see that the surplus is shared equitably as well. So the budget report is just a great tool. This is your marital balance sheet. Assets and liabilities just put in a balance sheet format. In this case, I did put in some separate properties, so you'll see it indicated right here. This is the marital and separate balance sheet. This, I'll just give you a heads up, this form is very difficult to get to print in a way that looks good. You can print it landscape, but it doesn't always capture all of these fields way over to the right. One thing you might do is, let's log out. I can't show you right now, but I believe there's a way to export this to Excel and use that to reformat it to file to get it to fit. Here's a footnote down here. There are lots of other reports. There are reports for lawyers, reports for planners, and pretty pictures. Projected net income after expenses and taxes. Well, here you can see that Blake would be very unhappy about this picture and would not want to be a part of that outcome, while Taylor would be going, I'm gonna break even for the rest of my life. You've seen these scary charts before. Now you can make them yourselves. Projected net worth. Wow, Blake's is going down like that because Blake thinks Blake needs to spend $17,000 a month. That's why that looks that way. Otherwise, it would be a curve going upwards. So these are really helpful to, we've all had that client who says, you look you in the eye and they almost look like they're praying and they say, am I going to be okay? And, you can show them one of these things if you've put the data in accurately to say, yeah, look, you are going to be okay. Here's the assets you have now. And based on what your projected spendings is and your retirement income, you're going to be fine. And these numbers would go up and you'd be able to say, like to Taylor, look, Taylor, you got $1 million now. You're going to have a little more than $1 million in 20 years or in 10 years, excuse me. So those reports are comforting for clients. I got another question. Guideline manual, send me a copy. Pat, would you send me your email? Oh, Anna's going to answer a question live. Go ahead, Anna.
I did that for you to answer live, John, sorry.
Oh, okay. Pat, my email is john@zblaw.net. I'm going to put that in the chat. I'm giving you that because it's easier to type. If you send me an email, I'll reply with the manual attached. And how do you get the cloud version? I'm glad you asked. You probably already have it. You would I think it's the quick start guide. So if you had the desktop version only, you have a key code in your software. That key code used to only get you the desktop, and now it will get you both. So there's a guide here that shows you, but I don't know if that is. I think it's down here. Go to Cloud Edition, upgrade to Cloud Edition. There you go. I got you an answer. Yay. So there it is. Put in your professional ID or your key code that you already have for your desktop version, and you will get credentials to use the cloud version. Great question. Thanks for asking that. So back to our software. I think that's it. Here's where you would export something to a CSV file, which is to Excel. Let me see. Here, there's this. Let me show you how this would be done. You do that. Now I've got this. I'm going to double click on it. It should open Excel. And there's that affidavit. It might take some work to get it to look pretty. But there it is, so that you can see all the data in an Excel spreadsheet. Obviously, you wouldn't be filing this, but you could use it to update it. You could, some clients are better Excel than I am, and so I send it back to them in Excel to correct. Don't let them make the corrections and send you back the CSV to then update the software, because that could lead to problems. There's no conversion going upstream. It's only downstream. But that's how you could get that data to print on one screen. I think that's about it, folks. I really appreciate you coming. We do these every 2 weeks. And I saw some of your names, and I know you've been using the software for a long time. George, glad to see you. And you can always come in with just a question and then sign off, and nobody expects you to sit here through the whole thing every time. You can always email me. My family law software email is john.zoller@familylawsoftware.com. And if you don't have any questions, I'm going to let the time run out. Thanks again.